Hey everyone, Ben here. Now we're approaching the midpoint of 2025 and so it's the perfect time to take stock of the state of sim racing this year. To do so, I asked you to give me a star rating from 1 to 4 for each of the major sim racing titles available in 2025 and to let me know why you rated the sim as you did in the comments. Now around 1500 votes were cast in total and I brought these ratings together and using a weighted average landed at a final score for each sim. So how do the rankings play out and what does it tell us about the state of sim racing in 2025? Let's find out. Okay, so first up we have a new kid on the block, Asto Corsa Evo, which released into early access in January 2025 and has an average score of 2 stars. Now if I'm honest, I did fear this could be an even lower rating given some of the feedback that I've seen online as to the state of the sim in these initial months of release. In part, that's why I have yet to jump in on AC Evo and I'm instead holding back until a more fully featured and refined version of the game is available. For those of you who have given it a go, views appear to be split between its early access, give it time, and even for early access, this game is not in the state it should be. Performance appears to be a particular issue for many early adopters, with sim racers boasting pretty beefy systems still reporting that they struggle to get consistent frame rates at times. Perhaps of most concern is the feeling among some that the core physics themselves don't yet pass muster and that the AI needs a lot of work. So the jury remains out on this one, which is a shame as the community was justifiably very excited at the prospect of being hands-on with the latest iteration of the Asto Corsa franchise. Let's see how the remainder of 2025 plays out and if the developers are able to hit their roadmap of releases. Oh, and a big thank you to Jason at SimRig Racer for providing me with the footage running in the background. Go check out his channel for great race and review content, there's a link in the description. Next up we have Race Room Racing Experience. It also comes in with an average viewer rating of 2 stars, and unfortunately despite some new content drops and the arrival of the sim onto low fuel motorsport for additional online racing options, it seems Race Room remains somewhat adrift in the sim racing sea. This is a huge shame because at its core, Race Room remains a fab sim to race in, and the lighting and graphics updates introduced in the last 12 months have given the experience a great visual refresh. But, as your comments suggest, for those looking for online racing, it can be tricky to get regular races with well-populated grids, even with the move to LFM. This leaves the title in a pretty awkward space, and without more new content or feature additions, it may be that it gets increasingly left behind in 2025. Here's hoping that that doesn't happen. Asto Corsa Competizione is up next with a rating of 2.5 stars. If a sim racing title can ever be considered finished, then ACC has entered that state in the last 12 months as the developers move on to AC Evo. This comes with positives and negatives. On the upside, it does represent something of a complete package, and having been consistently supported post-release with new content and physics updates since launch, it stands apart from many of the titles on this list as feeling like a very well-rounded experience. But on the downside, many of you report feeling the game has essentially been abandoned with work left to do. Ongoing complaints regarding elements of the physics will now never be resolved, and given the popularity of the sim on low-fuel motorsport was a big factor in sustaining the momentum of ACC for so long, now that the dev is no longer bringing new updates, some even felt it could be seen as a sim in decline. In a way, this is a fascinating window into what we all expect from our sim racing titles, and it's clear that even though ACC offers a solid racing experience at the end of its life, it will continue to divide opinion and it may struggle to attract new players in the future. And speaking of dividing opinion, the next title always generates strong views. That's Automoilista 2, which comes in with 3 stars. The last 12 months have seen some significant updates for the title, and like Race Room, the online offering has been strengthened by arriving onto low-fuel motorsport. For fans of AMS2, it continues to offer a wide range of distinctive cars and tracks to choose from, many of which you can't find in other sims. Rich historic racing content, very nice graphics, a dynamic weather system, and good PC and VR performance. But for others, it seems long-term concerns remain. The physics and handling model remain a bone of contention, and the quality of the AI likewise. My feeling is we've now reached a point with AMS2 where the core of the game is established, and it either is your cup of tea or it isn't. The narrative for some of recent years that a dev update will one day transform the sim to their liking has become harder to sustain. But for those who do enjoy AMS2, sustained content expansions mean there is certainly a lot to get stuck into. Next up is Le Mans Ultimate, which has certainly experienced a rise in popularity during 2025, and in our poll achieved an average rating of 3.5 stars out of 4. Now this is another title which has experienced a bit of controversy during early access, but it's nevertheless gained quite a dedicated following thanks to a solid if relatively limited online racing model, reasonably regular content and feature updates, and impressive underlying physics and force feedback. In fact, when it comes to the general driving feel, many believe LMU now represents the best in class in 2025. Questions remain as to the medium and long-term future for the title, but with suggestions of new investment, we may yet see more additions to the game beyond the next content drop in early June, when driver swaps and the Losail track in Qatar are expected to arrive. Might we see wider expansions in the future to include things like the Le Mans European Series? At the moment it's unclear, but with a solid base to build on and rising popularity, LMU could remain one to watch throughout 2025 and into 2026. And finally we come to iRacing, which just sneaked ahead of LMU in our poll, but also lands with an average rating of 3.5 stars. Now once again, I can already hear some of the groans that this is only because that my channel is focused on iRacing and therefore the results are inevitably biased. And again, I'll offer the same disclaimer, they may well be to a degree. This isn't a scientific poll, it really is only a bit of fun. But the reality remains that when it comes to online racing at least, iRacing remains leagues ahead of the competition, which is no doubt partly reflected in the votes cast. The developers continue to release regular quarterly updates, and while nothing quite as significant as the Tempest weather system has dropped recently, there are major UI, graphics and physics updates in the works, which in fairness is just as well, as plenty of you feel there are nevertheless areas of the sim in need of improvement. And it does seem only fair to point out that the purchasing model remains a bone of contention too, and probably always will do, with a live subscription required to access any content that you've licensed on the game. So, what do you make of these ratings and comments? It seems to me the whole sim racing scene is characterised by works in progress, perhaps with ACC as the exception. Some of these titles are at the very earliest stages of development, while some have potentially stalled. On the other hand, there are still some that are growing in popularity pretty quickly. Let me know in the comments how you'd score the different titles that we've covered in the video, and in the meantime, if you want to see just how much fun you can have in ranked racing on iRacing, then check out the video on screen now. It's a belter.